The story of Prophet Yousuf. Prophet Yousuf, peace be upon him, was the beloved son of Prophet Yakob, peace be upon him, who also had 11 other sons. Benjamin, who was the youngest, was from the same mother as Yousuf, while the rest were older half-brothers. When Prophet Yousuf was a young boy, he woke up one morning stunned by a mysterious dream he just had. He ran to his father in excitement and said, "Oh my father, I have seen 11 stars and the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating to me." Prophet Yakob was overjoyed in realization that his dear son Yousuf was indeed the chosen one by Allah to the prophethood. However, Yakob was concerned about his old son's possible reaction to this dream, for even though he treated them the same, he knew they all secretly had jealousy towards their younger brother Yousuf. He therefore warned Yousuf against telling his dream to his brothers, for they may harm him in the future. As time went on, the hatred and evil intentions in the hearts of Yousuf's brothers kept growing. They envied Yousuf because they felt he was special, and they were not unable to handle their emotions. They thought of a plan to get rid of Yousuf by throwing him into a well. So one day they approached their father and suggested that he sends Yousuf to come with them on a trip outside. Yakob was skeptical of the brothers as he feared for Yousuf's safety. Reluctantly he agreed, and then the next day Yousuf set off with his brothers. They traveled far in pursuit of a well deep enough to throw their brother in. When they finally reached the well, they pretended to all go and retrieve some water. They led him to it, which they then grabbed him. Yousuf began struggling and pleaded with them to let go. The brothers eventually outpowered Yousuf and threw him down the well and rushed back home. The brothers reached and ran to their father carrying Yousuf's shirt that was smeared with sheep's blood. They cried, "Oh our father, indeed we went racing with each other and left Yousuf with our possessions, and a wolf ate him." Yakob was suspicious of their story. He in his heart believed his son was still alive and that the brothers were likely enticed by Shaitan Satan to do evil. He pointed out that if the wolf was to have actually killed Yousuf, the t-shirt would have been ripped up while attacking him. Yakob maintained faith and patience and prayed every day for his son's safe return. Meanwhile, Yousuf managed to cling onto a stone ledge. He prayed and begged to Allah to grant him salvation. Soon a caravan that was on its way for Egypt stopped at this well to fetch some water. As they pulled the bucket up, they were shocked to see the boy clinging onto the rope. The caravan people realized the beauty that Yousuf possessed and began to discuss amongst themselves to take him in as a slave. Immediately they then shackled Yousuf and took him along to Egypt. Here he was auctioned and sold as a slave to the highest bidder, who happened to be the treasurer Al-Aziz, Yousuf's new master, who had no children, was completely taken with Yousuf. He told his wife to take good care of Yousuf and they could either use him as slave or take him for a son. Years went by. Yousuf not only grew up to be a handsome young man but was also blessed with exceptional knowledge and wisdom by Allah. His honesty won the heart of Al-Aziz, who placed Yousuf in charge of his household. During this period Yousuf was so affronted with his second trial. Zula Al-Aziz, his wife, who watched Yousuf day after day, began to feel passionately about him. Her obsession heightened to a degree where she was desperate to fulfill her desire. One day when her husband was away from home, she closed the doors and invited Yousuf to her. Yousuf, fearing Allah, replied, "I seek refuge in Allah. Indeed he is my master who has given me shelter. Indeed wrongdoers will not succeed." He turned away and ran towards the closed door to escape. Zuleika chased after him in desperation and grabbed his shirt from the back, which caused his shirt to rip. The door opened and Aliz entered. Ahmed, she ran to him, cried and accused Yousuf of trying to force her into something she didn't want to do and kept resisting. Yousuf was baffled. He continued to deny his mistress's claims, saying, "It was she who sought to seduce me." Al-Aziz was a fair man. He was confused and unsure of whom to believe, so he consulted his wife's cousin for advice. "If his shirt is torn from the front, then she has told the truth and he is of the liars," advised the cousin. However, his shirt was ripped from the back, meaning she was the forceful one. Yousuf's innocence was then proven. Al-Aziz apologized for his wife's indecency but swore Yousuf to keep the situation a secret. Despite this, the story of Zuleika and Yousuf began to spread. Other women began ridiculing her character. Distressed, Zuleika planned to prove to them her helpless reaction to Yousuf's extraordinary handsomeness, so she then invited some women to a banquet at her residence. One day there she served them fruit along with knives. When the women were happily chatting away while slicing fruits, Zuleika summoned Yousuf. The women looked up at him astonished at such angelic beauty. They cut their hands without even realizing they had. Zuleika seized the moment to announce that this was the man for whom she was blamed. She then warned Yousuf that if he denied her again he would be imprisoned, to which Yousuf replied, "My lord, prison is more to my liking than that to which they invite me." That night Zuleika convinced her husband that the only way to safeguard her honor and his prestige was to imprison Yousuf. Thus Yousuf was thrown into jail. During Yousuf's time in jail he was bestowed with the ability to interpret dreams. Two of Yousuf's cellmates, mesmerized by his piety, asked him to have their dreams explained. One dreamt that he was serving the king wine and the other was carrying bread on his head which two birds were eating up. Yousuf initially called them to Allah, then interpreted, O two companions of prison, as for one of you he will give drink to his master of wine, but as for the other he will be crucified and the birds will eat from his head. And he said to the one whom he knew would go free, mention me to your master. However, when he got out, Cheyenne made him forget to mention Yousuf to his master, and thus Yousuf remained in prison for several years. One day the king of Egypt had an odd dream and he summoned his men and asked them to explain to him the dream. The servant, who immediately remembered his companion in prison, informed the king of Yousuf and his impeccable dream interpretations. The king sent off his servant to prison to meet with Yousuf and inquire about the peculiar dream. Yousuf was overjoyed at the sight of his companion and knew that this was indeed the plan of Allah. He told him that the dream meant that you will plant for 7 years consecutively, and what you harvest leave in its spikes except a little from which you will eat. Then will come after that 7 difficult years, which will consume what you saved for them except a little from which you will store. Then will come after that a year in which the people will be given rain and in which they will press olives and grapes. Amazed, the king ordered Yousuf to be presented before him. Yousuf, however, refused to leave prison until his innocence was proved. The king thus summoned the women relating to Yousuf's incident. The women who had their hands cut spoke of Yousuf's innocence before the king. Allah forbid we know about him no evil. The wife of Al-Aziz was trapped. She then confessed to the king, now the truth has become evident. It was I who sought to seduce him, and indeed he is truthful. Thus Yousuf's innocence was then proven. Released from prison, Yousuf stood before the king to thank him for his generosity. The king, who was greatly impressed by Yousuf's honest mannerisms and his pleasant personality, led him to being appointed as the storekeeper over the storehouses across his land. As in charge, Yousuf immediately acted and began to harvest and store crops for the 7 years of fertility. Then there approached the years of famine that spread so far it reached the household of Yakob in Canaan. Yakob then decided sent all his sons except Baman to Egypt to purchase provisions. Yousuf immediately recognized his brothers and provided for them, but kept his identity disguised. He casually inquired about their family. The brothers informed the Yousuf of their house back in Canaan and their father and brother back home. Yousuf informed them to bring their younger brother along next time or they shall receive no further provisions. He also placed the money they had paid with their supplies as an incentive to return. The brothers returned home and said, O our father, measure has been denied to us, so send with us our brother so that we will be given provisions again, and indeed we will be his guardians. Yakob was enraged. How could he trust them when they had failed him terribly with Yousuf before? After some time, however, their needs pressed Yakob to send Benjamin with them for more provisions, and took their oath to guard him. When they reached Egypt, Yousuf drew Benjamin aside and whispered into his ear, Indeed I am your brother, so do not despair over what they used to do to me. Yousuf filled his brother's bags with grain. He then secretly planted the king's golden bowl in Benjamin's bag. On departing, the brothers were stopped by the king's soldiers, who were looking for the king's missing cup. The bags of the brothers were searched and the missing cup was retrieved from the bag of the youngest brother Benjamin. The soldiers cried, Indeed you are thieves. The brothers were shocked. The brothers immediately remembered their sick father back home and their vow to safeguard Benjamin at all cost. They begged the soldiers to release their younger brother and take one of them instead, but the soldiers refused. The eldest among the brothers said, I will not leave this land until my father permits me, or Allah decides for me. So the rest of the brothers left Egypt, leaving the eldest behind. When Yakob learned of his youngest son's predicament, he wept and wept until he became blind. He resorted to prayer for comfort, for he knew that only Allah could ease his pain. Soon he instructed his sons to return to the king's land and inquire about their brother. The sons returned to Egypt. Once again they met with Yousuf and pleaded that tragedy had befallen them. Yousuf then spoke to them in their native language. Do you know what you did with Yousuf? It didn't take long for the brothers to realize that this was indeed their long-lost brother and began to tremble in fear, but Yousuf comforted them, saying, May Allah forgive you. He then said, Take this my shirt and cast it over the face of my father. His eyesight will return as instructed. The brothers casted Yousuf's shirt over their father's face and Allah miraculously restored his eyesight. They begged their father to seek Allah's forgiveness for them together. They all set off to Egypt, where Yousuf warmly welcomed them. Yousuf raised his father upon the throne and said, "O my father, this is the explanation of my vision of before. My Lord has made it reality, and he was certainly good to me when he took me out of prison and brought you here after Satan had induced estrangement between me and my brothers. Indeed my Lord is subtle in what he wills. Indeed it is he who is the knowing, the wise." Thus Allah reunited father and son. The lesson from the story of Prophet Yousuf is that from his dream knew he was destined for greatness, but it seemed at every turn of his life he was met with difficulties and adversity. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold as slave, and unjustly imprisoned. Yousuf could have chosen to be bitter and question Allah by saying, "I thought you had ordained for me greatness." He could have easily complained and asked, "Why do these things keep happening to me?" But he knew better. He knew Allah had a plan for him and he had to just keep faith. Yousuf knew by just focusing on being the best he could, treating people right and with respect, doing more than what was requested, that Allah would take care of him. That is end of the video. If made it to the end, I appreciate your support and glad you enjoyed. Why don't you drop a like and subscribe for more? Until next time, inshallah, may Allah bless you all.